All right, guys, so this here isn't in your note sheet, but it is what we were covering today, what the first part that we're covering today. And what we're covering is something called the zero product property. So if we look at two numbers, if I said a times 0 equals 0, let's see here, sorry, let's start over. Let's say 7 times b equals 0. What is the value of b? Is anything times 0 is 0. The only way that I can get a number times something else to equal 0 means that it has to be 0, yes? Now, say I said a times b equals 0. Well, if I multiply 0 times 0, I get what? 0. If a was 0, does b have to be 0? No. What could b be? B could be anything. It just means a has to be 0, right? Or what could be 0? B. One of them has to be 0. Because we could have one of them be 0, or they could both be 0. But one of them has to be at least 0, yes? Because whenever any two things multiply together and they equal 0, it means one of them has to be 0. So if we have two real numbers a and b, a times b equals 0, well, it means either a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. One of them has to be 0. So when we look at these problems here, like the first one on the note sheet, we have 2x times x minus 4 equals 0. So here I have two things multiplied together that equal 0, yes? So because of the zero product property, it means that one of these has to be 0, yes? So we're either saying that the first thing, which is 2x, is going to be equal to 0, or that x minus 4 is equal to 0. One of them has to be 0. And now we can solve. So we can start off with the 2x. So what can I do to solve for the value of x? We would divide both sides by 2. And 2x divided by 2 would be x. And 0 divided by 2 is 0. 0 divided by 2 would be 0. So one of the values for this here would be x is equal to 0. Okay. How about the other one here, x minus 4? How can we solve that for the value of x? Because we want to get x by itself, so we need to move the negative 4. Well, negative 4 plus 4 is 0, so these cancel, giving me x by itself, and x is equal to 4. So these here are our two values. Any questions on this here? Now let's check it just to make sure this works. So I can plug 0 in for x if I wanted to check it. So we'd have 2 times 0 minus 4. And we want to see what this equals. Well, 2 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 4 is negative 4. And 0 times negative 4 is 0. Because we have that multiplication of 0, everything becomes 0. Okay, let's try it the other way. Let's do 4. So we have 2 times 4 minus 4. Well, 2 times 4 is, and our 4 minus 4 becomes like we wanted. So it works out that 0 and 4 both make this equation equal 0. Any questions on this here so far? We ready to look at the next one? Okay, I'm going to erase all this here. So let's look at the next one here. So we have x minus 3 times x minus 9 is equal to 0, yes? So I do have two things multiplied together to equal 0, and because of the zero product property, it means one of them must be 0. So we're either going to say that x minus 3 is 0, or that x minus 9 is 0. One of these has to be 0. So how can I solve for our x minus 3? We can add 3 to both sides because negative 3 plus 3 would cancel, telling us x is equal to 3. So there's one of our solutions. Now what can we do for the other one? We can add 9 to both sides. Since it's x minus 9, the opposite of our negative 9 would be plus. Negative 9 plus 9 would cancel out, and that would tell us x is equal to 9. And that's it. If we wanted to check it, we could, and it would show us that this is 0 on both cases. But that's all we have to do for this here. Any questions on either one of these here? Right, we're trying to find the value of x that will make the function equal 0. Now, because we have two things being multiplied together, our zero product property tells us that one of them has to be 0. That's the only way we can get 0 with multiplication, is if one of them is 0. So knowing that, we can set both of them equal to 0 and get our two cases. Questions on this here? All right. I want you all to try to do A. Try to do letter A. So I know I looked around and I saw that all of y'all got this started off correct. We knew that since the two things multiply together to equal 0, one of them has to be 0, so we set them equal to 0. Also notice that everybody was able to see that we can add 6 to both sides, which would tell us here x is equal to 6. And we're able to get this one here. Now the other one, 3x equals 0. Well, what can we do here? So x is equal to? But also we have 3 times x equals 0, yes? Anytime we have two things multiplied together to equal 0 means one of them has to be, so x would have to be, because I can't make 3 0, it's 3. So the only thing we can change is x. Now here it works, but over here x plus 5 and x minus 4. That this here is the right one? This and this, both of these are the right one. Because if we plug it back in and check it, because if we do 0, we'd have 3 times 0 times 0 minus 6. Well, 3 times 0 is 0 minus 6 is 0 times negative 6 is. Okay, that works. If we plug in 6, 3 times 6 minus 6. Well, 3 times 6 is 6 minus 6 is 18 times 0 is. So here it works out we have two values of x that will make this statement true. Yes.
Well, our semester test, are we gonna like go over the whole entire thing, or are we just gonna test over a certain chapter that comes next?
It'll depend on where we get to. Any other questions on this here? All right. I want y'all to try to do letter B. And then we'll come back. And it looks like everybody got the answer to this one here as well. Now we'd split it up to x plus 5 and x minus 4. Now for the x plus 5, we would subtract 5 from both sides, causing these to cancel, giving us x is equal to negative 5. And here we would add 4 to both sides, minus x is equal to. Then we get these two here, yes? Questions on any of these here? Do we feel good about these here? Yes? Feel comfortable with doing these? Okay. Let's skip on to this next one here, because I feel like y'all feel comfortable with doing these. The ones we've been doing, 1, 2, those 3, are very much the same as what we've been doing. Yes? So let's look at this one here. So we have 2x plus 7 times 2x minus 7 equals 0. So what do I know about these two here? Has to be 0, yes? So either 2x plus 7 is 0, or 2x minus 7 is 0. Because one of them has to be 0. So let's look at the one on the left first. What can we do first in getting x by itself? We can subtract 7. We want to do addition, subtraction first. So we'll subtract 7 from both sides, because 7 minus 7 is 0, which gives us 2x is equal to negative 7. Now what would we do next? We would divide both sides by 2. And once we divide both sides by 2, we'll get x is equal to negative 7 halves. Well, try rewriting that so I don't put the circle through the middle of the answer. So we get x is equal to negative 7 halves. Any questions on this here? So let's go on and do the other one. So what would we do for it here? What would we do first? Yes. So here we can add 7 to both sides, because since the 7 is negative, we would add it to both sides, because negative 7 plus 7 is 0. So we have 2x. 0 plus 7 is 7. And then what would we do next? We would divide by 2, because we want to get x by itself. And 2x divided by 2 would give us x is equal to 7 halves. So our two values of x that make this function equal 0 are negative 7 halves and 7 halves. These here would be our two answers. Questions on this here? Okay. Let's look at another one. So here we have x minus 1 squared equals 0. Well, anything that's squared is just telling me that it's being multiplied by itself. Yes? So really what I have is x minus 1 times x minus 1 is equal to 0. The x minus 1 is being multiplied by itself. So I do have two things that are being multiplied together to equal 0, yes? I have x minus 1 and x minus 1. So we can split those apart. And we can say that x minus 1 is equal to 0, or that x minus 1 is equal to 0. So what can we do to solve for the value of x? We can add 1 to both sides. And we get that x is equal to 1. And over here we would add 1 to both sides, and we get x is equal to 1. So how many unique values do we have? One, right? Because, well, we found out what? X is equal to 1 and x is equal to... Do we have two different answers? No, we have one answer. So we have one unique value for x as 1. We have one value, unique value. But how many answers did we get? Well, 2, because we have x is equal to 1 and x is equal to 1. They're just not unique. They're the same answer. X equals 4 and x equals 2. Because there are 2. 3 and 7 are unique because they're two different values. 0 and 4, 0 and 3, 0 and 2. Because they're different. Here, x is equal to 1 and x is equal to 1 and 1 are the same. Yes. Because we consider them to be unique values if they're not the same thing. And it's not uncommon to have repeated values, especially when we look at higher degree polynomial functions. It is possible to have repeated values, but they're not considered to be unique values. So, especially big idea math, because it normally, especially if it's asking for answers where it expects 2, it'll give you 2 blanks to fill in. Here, it's only going to give you, because we only have one unique value, which is, ironically, 1. So it could work out that we have only one value. So when we plug 1 in, we would have 1 minus 1 squared, yes? So like this here? So, no, let's do it that way. So if I have it as x minus 1 times x minus 1, so I would have 1 minus 1. Ah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it would work out. Now, we don't have to have just 2. We could have as many as we want. Because, again, any 2 or more things multiplied together to equal 0 means one of them has to be 0. So even though we have 3, we could really say here that, well, x plus 1 could be 0, x minus 3 could be 0, or x minus 2 could be 0. Any one of these 3 could be 0. So now we just need to solve for each one of these here. So for x plus 1, what do we need to do to solve for the value of x? Minus 1 from both sides, which would tell me x is equal to negative 1. For x minus 3, we would add 3 to both sides, which would tell us x is equal to. And last but not least, we'd add 2 to both sides, which tells us x is equal to 2. So these three answers are our solutions. So we can have more than one. Any questions on any of this here? Because on any of these here, when we solve each equation, we don't have to. We can, but the only way that I would make you check them is if it says in the script or in the instructions, check your answers. If it doesn't say to check your answers, you don't need to. Any questions on any of these here? Would we like to see this one work? Or are we comfortable with these here? Do we feel good with these here? Yes? Okay. Because I don't think any of these are really adding anything huge to what y'all are all already know. Yes? Y'all feel comfortable with solving these? Yes? Okay. Let's look at the last thing we're going to talk about today. GCF. Does anybody know what a GCF is? It's the greatest common factor. Greatest common factor of a polynomial is something that divides into each term evenly. It's the biggest number or terms that we can pull out of each term in the expression. So we want to factor out the greatest common monomial from the factors 4x to the fourth plus 24x cubed. There we go. Okay. So we look at this here. We're going to look at the numbers first, and then we'll look at the variables second. So we're looking at 4 and 24. What is the biggest number that will divide into both 4 and 24? 4. Because 4 will divide into 4. Yes, which is 4. And what 4 will divide into 24 evenly. Yes. So the biggest number that will divide into both is 4. So when we talk about the greatest common factor, we're looking at what is the biggest number that will divide into both. For the numbers, it is 4. Now we need to look at the variables. Now both of them do have x, yes? So we know we can take at least one x out of both of them. Can I take 2? Because how many x's do I have here? 4, because it's x to the fourth, so there's 4 of them. Here I have x to the third. Are there at least 2 in both? Well, yes, because I have 4 and 3. So if I was dividing, can I take 2 of the x's away from x to the fourth and x to the third? Well, yes, because I have more than that. Can I take 3 away from both of them? Can I take 4 away from both of them? Because x to the third, I can't take 4 away from 3. So how many is the most that I can take from both? 3, yes? And that's all the terms that are common in both, yes? So the greatest common factor, the biggest thing I can divide out of both terms is 4x to the third, yes? Okay, so that's our greatest common factor. Now what we're going to do is we're going to factor it out. We're going to divide it out of each term. Are we ready for this here? What is 4 divided by 4? 1. 1. Yes, anything divided by itself is 1. Yes? Okay. So we can put that there for now. X to the 4th divided by x to the 3rd. Or really, I'm pulling 3 x's out of x to the 4th. So how many would be left over? 1. I would just have x. Yes? Plus 24 divided by 4 is what? 6. Yes? So we would have 6. I have x to the 3rd, and I take x to the 3rd, I divide it by x to the 3rd. I'm taking 3 away, so how many would be left? 0, or divided by itself would be. So factor out completely. So we have this here. Now you're probably wondering, why would we worry about this? Why would we do this? Well, what am I left with? I'm left with 2 things being multiplied together, yes? So if we were solving this here, it might be a little bit hard for 4x cubed, 4x to the 4th plus 24x cubed, trying to figure out what values of x will make it equal 0, yes? But since I factored out 4x cubed, I now have 2 things being multiplied together, yes? Am I now able to find out what values of x would make this 0? Well, yeah, now I have 2 things multiplied together. That, So we have, if we were to solve this, we'd have 4x cubed equals 0, and x plus 6 is equal to 0, yes? Now, 4x cubed, that's really just saying 4 times x times x times x equals 0, yes? Well, if I have more than one thing multiplied together to equal 0, one of them has to be. So here, x would be, x would be, x would be. So I got 0 3 times. They're all going to be 0 because the only way I can have 4 times x to the 3rd equals 0 means so it's going to be 0. Now, when we get into higher degree polynomial functions, we'll deal with this more in Algebra 2. We'll understand that the degree of the function and the number of solutions are actually intertwined and tells us how many that we have. So we get this here. Questions on this here? Okay, let's look at this one here. 12x to the 3rd and 3x squared. What is the biggest number that we can divide into both 12 and 3? 3, yes? So the number for our greatest common factor would be 3. And now we need to look at x. Now, I know we're going to need at least 1 because they both do have an x term in there, yes? So how many x's can I take out of both of them? 2, because the smallest exponent that we have is 2. So the most I can take out is 3x squared. Now, if I do factor out 3x squared, let's see what we have left. Well, 12 divided by 3 is 4. Because 3 times 4 is 12. So 12 divided by 3 is 4. So how many x's did I start out with 12? How many am I taking away? So how many should I have left? So 12x cubed divided by 3x squared leaves us with 4x. Yes? Plus 3 divided by 3 is 1. X squared divided by x squared is 1, yes? Because whenever I factor everything out of a term, because I took 3 out completely, yes? I took x squared out completely. I am always left with 1. And that's it here. Because one way that we can check this is if I wanted to multiply it back out and make sure I get the same thing, we can do that. So you don't have to write this down. 3 times 4 is 12, yes? X squared times x would be x cubed. Is that what we started out with? 3 times 1 is, and then we would have x squared. Is that what we started out with? Mm-hmm. So if we ever wanted to check these when we factor, we can always multiply back through and see, do we get back where we started? Any questions on this? Here. All right.